What's up YouTube, Skybox here, back in another video where we talk car smart investing. Today got something really special. Alright, I'm gonna do a 20 card PSA submission walkthrough. Right, so normally I would do PSA reviews, but this time around I thought doing something a bit different. Just gonna walk through you guys on the 20 cards that I'm gonna submit to PSA using the value box submission. Alright, my thoughts and why do I choose to send some of these cards in, and hopefully maybe you guys can get something out of it. Stick around. Alright, welcome back guys. So before I go into the cards, I just want to talk a bit about PSA submission. Now, I use PSA, I would say 95% of the time, right? I do send some cards to Beckett, but just, for some particular reason I would send to Beckett. But most of the times I send a PSA, the service has been great. I've been doing it since 2019. Of course we had all the ups and downs, but generally everything's been so far so good. And I did post some stuff recently on my IG about certain slabs coming back cracked, right, and chipped and damaged, but PSA got them out sorted perfectly fine. Everything's all great. So for today's video I'm gonna go through or walk through with you guys a typical 20 card submission that I sent to PSA using the bulk value. Now, one thing that you'll notice that in this particular order is they're mostly 90s, which is generally the range that they're doing. They've got a bit about year 2000 cars, but definitely no ultra modern cars inside here. And you will talk about the great expectations, right? So, typically people, when you talk about PSA reviews, people saying that, oh, I got a 70% gem rate or maybe a 65% gem rate. Normally for my submissions, you'll be surprised that my gem rate is only at about like 20%. Right, it's pretty low, right? Now, do you say I'm disappointed 20%? Of course I want something better than 20%, but normally 20% gets the order done, right? And I'm going to explain to you guys why right after this. Alright, so shifting the scene a little bit here. This is my typical background when I take photographs on my Instagram, and some of you follow my channel, you would know my Penny Hardaway backgrounds here in my little studio. So coming back to my 20 card order here, right? So I'm just gonna flip through quickly and give you guys a quick glimpse on some of the cards that we're gonna talk about today, right? So you'll notice that right off the bat, they're mainly from the 90s, a bit of sprinkle year 2000s, but mainly from the 90s, right? And we're gonna talk about them on these cards separately and why I chose to send some of these for grading. Now, it's not just because that they have definitely value multipliers, that's a given, but why I chose to send some of these cards, and kind of I talk about some of the the little fine details on why some of these cards actually do all right in a PSA 9 or a PSA 8 for that matter. Alright, first up, so I'm going to talk about these cards here. These are pretty recognizable cards. 1998 EX Century Dunkin' Donuts insert. These are acetate inserts. They're clear see-through, as you can see right here. And a lot of people are very familiar, not because that, it's related to a certain donut, but a lot of these inserts actually turn yellow. In fact, I had one guy who actually told me that he thought that it came in yellow. That's not the case, due to sunlight exposure and things like that. So, but one thing that you will be interested to know is that PSA actually doesn't significantly punish the grade if it has tints of yellow. You can see this Scottish Pippen here. It's slightly yellow compared to the Penny Hardaway, right? Just slightly, right? And you don't get punished at all for that. So PSA would normally just grade it as normal, right? Unless it's super yellow, and that's a kind of like almost like a discoloring on the surface. But one thing that these insert is prone to is color loss on the foiling. Like, this one here looks good, but you will see sometimes, some of these marks and some of the foil loss on this printing over here, as well as this being an acetate card is actually prone to scratches. So something that you need to look with the magnifying glass to check out here any surface, because definitely surface scratches will give you a downgrade. Normally, Dunkin' Donuts PSA 8 and PSA 9, generally, you get back the money for the raw and the grading fees. PSA 10, obviously, that's a huge bonus. But 9s, typically, you get to make some money by just getting 9. So fair and acceptable, aim for the 10s obviously, but they're not easy, hence, perhaps a 10x premiums on PSA 10s. So 9s is what you gun for, 8s is generally okay, and these inserts are relatively easy to move, and that's why I love it. Alright, 2 simple cards here. These are what I call base refractors. These are from 2005 Topps Chrome refractor of Kobe Bryant, and this is a 2007 Bowman Chrome refractor. Now these one are called base refractors because there are other parallel versions, right? There's the black refractor, the gold refractor, the X refractor. So these are the base ones. Now generally raw they command, like in this case, between $150 to $300, for either the Kobe or LeBron. Now they represent good entry level for new collectors who just want to get beyond the base, right? So once you get graded, PSA 9 of this version gets maybe about $250 to $350 depending, right? So they are the I would say the silver prisms of the current ultra modern, but those compared to how easy to get silver prisms these days compared to back then, these Topps Chrome refractors, maybe they come like 3 or 4 in a box, right? So when you're trying to hunt a Kobe, which is maybe a base set, let's say 100 cards, right, you're gonna go through like 20 boxes before you get one. These days silver prisms come really easy, but these are easy, very very liquid, and these are kind of easy to grade as well because you notice that they are white borders here, right? And then with the centering, you can tell whether or not the centering is alright. More attention is paid to the front as opposed to the back. As you can see, this Kobe here, it's pretty off-centered to the back. So look in the front, looks okay. 10s are, I would say, generally okay to come by. 9s are pretty common, so as long that you don't get any damages on the edges or corners, no scratching on the surface, and decent looking surface, not necessarily 70-30 or 60-40, but you can generally get a PSA 9, and it's a good return as well. Okay, moving on. I got 3 Skybox Z-Force cards here. Okay, the first one I'm going to talk about is a slam cam insert. Nice looking insert. You can see the Shaquille O'Neal. That's what I love about 90s inserts, right? The Michael Jordan for this one here, a PSA 9, goes for about like $2,000 now. Shaquille O'Neal obviously doesn't go for that much money, but given the aesthetic of this card, right? In the slab, it's just an awesome collector's piece. A raw for this one is about $100, $120, and maybe a PSA 9 can fetch about like $200, $250. So it's still a decent return. Not necessarily need to get a PSA 10, right? So PSA 9 is just fine. If you happen to get a PSA 8, maybe you can actually recover back the original raw cost and perhaps some grading fees, right? Of course, if you take into account eBay fees, then maybe you're gonna lose a bit of money. But generally, these kind of cards, you don't do very bad on them. But moving on to 2 bigger Z-Force inserts, and this is the Rave, that's numbered to 399, right? So see the Kobe here, and then Kevin Garnett here. Now, the Rave, there's the base version of this, which is not numbered, and there's a Rave for 399. There's a Super Rave as well, that's number 50. So, but these ones here, again, like the refractors previously, they represent the next step up, right, in terms of collectability. So these are not super duper expensive as well. I think the Garnet is like 100-ish, and the Kobe here is about like $400. So they are still reasonable and still heavily collected. And these are early year serial number cards, right? You're talking about 1997, 1998. So serial numbers compared to these days, we're not talking about things like number 10, number 25, but back then, number 399 is kind of a big deal. So, love it. Moving on, I got a couple of inserts here that I want to talk about. So first up, this one's not a big insert, right? So this is Natural Born Thrillers. One of these kind of inserts, they can be a bit tricky to grade, right? Because given the full back and colored borders. So although it's tricky, what I meant is it's actually pretty easy, right? So you just pick it up, you can quickly straight away tell whether or not you could send this in for grading. Now the downside is buying this raw on eBay has a lot of challenges because there are some of these microscopic, a little bit of edge wear here that's hard to see from the photos unless it's a full detailed scan. So you take a bit of risk of buying these kind of inserts from eBay. Like for this particular Kevin Garnett, it's one of a very nice condition Garnett, but I had 2 others before this that didn't actually make the cut. Now the one that I always send, despite numerous flaws, I would say, is this 1998 Skybox Thunder Lightning. Awesome insert, right? Look at how nice this is now. This insert is super tough to grade. Okay, first of all, things that doesn't go for it is edges, lots and lots of whitening, surface as well. It gets a lot of these white print marks. This pigment here is actually looks awesome, right? One of the rare ones that I could get in a decent condition. Now on eBay, on the scans, you can tell, you can have a look at, you can have a good gauge on the condition, but don't be too deterred by some of the flaws that you see. Sometimes you do get all that print marks here, you do see the edges, and likely maybe PSA 7 or PSA 8, which is generally a good grade for this insert. Can you believe it or not, right? I'll be pretty happy with PSA 8, to be honest. PSA 9, I'll be over the top, right? Generally, PSA 7 would kind of get you back your money depending on how much money you came in with the raw. If you don't overpay for the raw, right, you generally would do okay in a PSA 7 or PSA 8 for this insert. And lastly, talk about this one, exclamation points. Now, this card actually came in a sleeve like this. So this was inside here. Now you got an option of actually sending the card in the sleeve to PSA, or taking a card out like myself here and sending in the card like this to PSA. You won't get the minimum size requirement because this obviously is smaller than a standard size card. Now, one reason why you would send this without a sleeve is generally the sleeve is not taken care of properly, right? There's a lot of damages. People just kind of like toss this around, whereas the card is kind of like snuck safely within the sleeve. So this Shaquille O'Neal looks nice in the sleeve. I had cards whereby it didn't look nice, and especially at the corners. The reason being is because people tend to take out the sleeve and try to slot back in, but there's this little folding mark right here at the corners that kind of like jams the card a little bit if you didn't put it in the right angle, and that will damage the corners if they're not careful, right? So this one here has been well taken care of. I like this Shaquille O'Neal. This one, I can't remember the price, but of course, Michael Jordan and the BGS 9 fetches about like $2,000. So Shaquille O'Neal, probably a fraction of that, but definitely you'll be looking at hopefully a PSA 8 to a PSA 9. I think a PSA 8, you probably break even on an 8, 9 you make a bit of money. Moving on from Shaquille O'Neal is his former sidekick, Anthony Penny Hardaway. So I got 4 Penny Hardaways here. You can tell I'm a fan of Penny as well. If you can see in the background, it's a bit blur. So I got here 297 Golden Touch insert. These are not easy to grade, particularly because they have black edges here, and then they have black edges at the back. And it's pretty rough with die cut as well. So the laser cutting and back in the days, or was it machine cutting back in the days, is not as precise as the laser cutting you have today. So you get a lot of copies with edge wear, and you can tell the difference between these two pennies as well. If you can see in the light, one's a bit green, right? So this is a bit subject to be green, which may suffer a bit on the grade. So generally Golden Touches, right, even though it's pretty hard to grade, but the premium comes in from PSA 9 up. So from what I noticed, even PSA 8, because the high entry value for this particular Golden Touches, getting a PSA 8 may not actually do it. I believe Penny Hardaway is about like 200 to 250 raw. All right, PSA 8 is probably about 250. Okay, so if you're going to take into account grading fees and the eBay fees, you're going to lose money on PSA 8. So, but I generally take the punt. I don't think any of this might fetch a 9, to be honest, but I'm still sending this in because, again, certain collectors, these are not like, you could find them anywhere, right? These are still pretty hard chase cards, but generally people are willing to pay more for the nicer condition ones. But if the price gets way too far off, PSA is sometimes acceptable, and maybe you can still find ways to recoup your original investment. Now moving on, I have this one here. I believe this is a 96-97 Court Masters. Again, acetate card here. Penny Hardaway, not a very expensive card. BGS 9.5. I think recently sold for about 250. A decent raw is about like $80. So still get the same multipliers as how you do ultra modern. These are very easy to grade in terms of the corners and edges because they are partially acetate. Just gotta pay attention to the surface to make sure there are no scratches. So Easy PSA 9s would generally get you a bit of profit on this ones, and hopefully PSA 10s. Last year, 1996, this is the precious metal insert, which is inserted one per box in a 1996 metal product, which is the Kobe's rookie year. Now, how you can tell the difference is this is completely in silver, right? The base version, you have some colors over here, some colors over here, but this is how you can tell this is the silver version. So inserted one in a box, this is almost like before. It came out the same as refractors, so I wouldn't say it's it's before refractors, but this is named precious metals, which is the precursor to the iconic PMG back in 1997, 1 year after this one. So nice looking card. I wouldn't say extremely rare, but still tough to find, right, in nice condition as well. Okay, moving on, I just got a few more random stuff to talk about. So this is Ultra abilities. For Ultra abilities, this is the All-Star version. There are a couple of parallels. There is the Superstar version that the BGS 9.5 just sold today for $4,200. That's the die cut version. This one here rolls about like 100, 150, and PSA 10 sells for about like 500. So pretty easy to grade as well, despite having a little bit of colors here, but I tend to grade quite well for this particular Jordan insert. Another one that doesn't really grade very well is this is a top rock stars. Now this is a non-refractor, this is just the base version. Now this one's a bit tricky. So this one has a foiling here, it has die cut as well, and the back has this, it's not pure white, it doesn't have a border. So a lot of things going for it. You can't really tell whether or not you have an edge problem depending on how the cutting is back then, but generally this one in a PSA 9 you still get decent returns, surprisingly, for a base insert, a non-refractor version. Jordan base cards are not the true base, but the base inserts generally do pretty well. One parallel here, this is the 1996 Skybox Premium. This is Ruby's Steve Nash rookie, right? So you can see here, Ruby's. Now this is not a very expensive card. I think raw is about like $50, and if you can get a PSA 9, it will fetch a bit of a premium on this. Only in the PSA 9, I think there's not much demand for a PSA 8, especially for Steve Nash. Now, of course, if you get a Kobe Rubies, generally that one, any grade would do all right. But for this Steve Nash, you definitely want to be gunning for the 9, right? Again, I'm saying 9s and not 10s, right? 10s is just gravy, for all the cards that I've showed you in this video. So I'm just talking about 9s, whereby with 9s you can definitely make profit for not all, but some of these. Moving on, 1997, subsequent year to that 96, this is a Hoops high voltage. This is the high voltage 500. It's number to 500 of right here. There we go. Of Chris Webber. Now you can see that the backs is different. This is a very popular insert. I think a lot of you guys are pretty familiar with this one. So these are pretty rare now. The one thing is, not a lot of people are convinced that it's only 500, even though that's actually stated here 500, right? But again, highly collectible set. The Jordan and the Kobe's fetch a lot of money, even in low grades. But for these ones, for the other, lesser known players like Chris Webber, you generally want to get something in the PSA 8 and upwards. Now, they are, I would say they are easy to grade. There are some tricky things to it. Surprisingly, I sent in the normal high voltage versions thinking that it's an easy PSA 9, clean corners, clean edges, but it come back a PSA 8. So for this one, hopefully 8 is still alright, but you generally want to try and get a 9s for this one to really make your returns. Right, lastly for this one, this is card number 19. I've got one more card to show you after this, right? And it's not necessarily the most expensive, but the most interesting piece. But this one, it's a 1997 Molten Metal Tracey McGrady. This is the unnumbered version, right? The numbered version, the titanium one's numbered 250, and that's the more expensive one. These ones here, pretty cheap. This is like 150 raw, right? And if you get it graded to a PSA 9, maybe you can get about like 30% return. But this insert has a lot of things that's pretty difficult as well. The edges tend to have a lot of problems, the corners tend to have a lot of problems. So don't go all out and get this one. This is not one easy one to grade. I had to pick up a couple of these before actually identifying one that's worthy to send through. Okay, the last card in this submission, you may find it pretty surprising. This is the 1992 Beam Team, not the members only. This is just a base Beam Team insert from 1992 of Scottie Pippen, right? Now, this is a Shaquille O'Neal's rookie year, so a lot of Shaquille O'Neal's got graded, obviously, and Michael Jordan's as well. But I have here Scottie Pippen now. With Scottie Pippen, gonna make you rich? Obviously not. I think a PSA 9 goes for about $100 at most. Okay, but one thing to note is the raw version of this one's easily attainable. It could be about $5, maybe a bit less, and you gotta put in about like $20 for grading fees. Okay, now, most of the time with this kind of Beam teams, PSA 8 is a general grade. 9s occasionally, that's why there's a premium on the Beam Team 9s for Shaq and for Jordans, but 8s are generally what you get. And for Pippen, 8s is probably you get maybe $25, so on an 8 you actually will break even or lose a bit of money, because once you factor in eBay fees and whatnot, you kind of lose a bit of money. But what I do with these kind of inserts like 92 Beam teams is I use them as a filler, right, to try to get the 20th card. So let's say, for example, in this case I had 19 cards to send a PSA, a short of one, rather than just to randomly pick a base card. I generally go for filler cards such as this Beam team, which has a very low downside and a very high upside. And so what I meant is, if you get a PSA 8, which is generally, you just check to make sure that they are generally in good condition, the edges and corners, no big obvious dents and marks and dings, and make sure no surface scratches, and most importantly, make sure there's not minimum size. So you gotta check, make sure the sizing is correct. Now, once you tick all those boxes, it's almost like assured, right? So you won't lose significant money. The Ace, if you think about it, right, if you're gonna spend $20 on grading, $5 on Pippen, so that's 25, and you're gonna get back 25, but you lose, maybe 15% or 20% on eBay fees. You lose $5, but generally, when you send the order value, it's 19 versus 25, so you're going to save $6 per card. So obviously, losing $5 for one card is worth saving $6 on all the other cards they sent earlier. And I just don't only have Pippen. As you can see here, I got other players as well: Sean Kemp, Dominic Wilkins, Drexler, Hakeem, Jack Malone. So all these, right? Okay, in the PSA 8, generally you would get back your money. If you ask me, maybe in some cases you might not, like a lesser known place like Hornacek, Jack Malone, Chris Mullin. These are the ones you are trying to get 9s, because they are set collectors who try to put this together, and there is premiums on this. So it's a kind of like an interesting swing to kind of like to close out your order if you're short of a couple of cards. And these are the kind of inserts that I like to pick up just to kind of like fill up the order. So interesting last piece. Not a lot of people have this strategy. You probably maybe just want to wait or get that 20th card, but for me, timing's a thing. I definitely need to keep moving stuff to PSA. So when I have like 19 cards, I definitely need to find one to get the order moving, rather to just to wait to pick up one more card, wait another like 3 or 4 days or a week sometimes for the card to come. So that's why this is in the order. Alright, so there you have it, right? My inside look at my 20 card submission. Everything 90s here, so not your typical ultra modern, but one thing that if you've been following from start to finish, if you actually reached this far, you will notice that I never talk about PSA 10s. I never talk about gem, getting gem copies. I know a lot of people, when you send PSA, you're expecting to get the gems, the 10s, 65% gem rate, but with these inserts, if I get PSA 10 on any one of them, basically they just make the entire order for sure. Okay, so normally, just a rough number without being very too specific, I generally want to get about like 70% PSA 9s, some PSA 8s. Occasionally, you may get 1 or 2 6 or 7s, because these are 90s inserts. Generally, they're old. They would have some hidden flaws that you can't actually pick up, so that's generally acceptable. And for an order like this, normally I would get a nice rate of return, maybe about like 20 to 25% overall. Nothing too spectacular, nothing like 3x or 2x, right? But unless you get PSA 10. But in normal circumstances, typical order like this, some mixture of PSA 8s and PSA 9s, okay, would net me about 20% return, and that's just good enough for me. Just keep on rinse and repeat, and that's how we roll. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed this video and got some insight into how I send cards to PSA. Do like, subscribe to follow this channel for more content in the future. Thanks for watching, guys. Till the next one. Skybox out.